Okay, friends, welcome back to another edition of Mind Games with Guerin. I'm Guerin, sellout crowd columnist and occasional podcaster. Well, we want to talk about Oklahoma football today, specifically the new starting quarterback for the Sooners, with a guy who knows him pretty well, knows him a lot better than I do, knows him, I'm guessing, a lot better than all of our viewers and listeners. He is Rodney Webb. We'll bring Rodney to the show in just a second. First things first, we want to thank our sponsors to this episode of Mind Games and others. MidFirst Bank leads the list this week, followed by the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. Our friends, both of them, at Two Fellas Movers, FireLakeJobs.com, Next Gen Roofing, 988 Oklahoma's Mental Health Lifeline, and of course, Oklahoma Ford Dealers. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford Dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of SUVs and trucks. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. I last talked to my guest, Rodney, it's almost 2 years ago. I was still at the Tulsa World, and Jackson Arnold was just a commitment to the Sooners. He hadn't signed yet, and you told me that there was a lot to look forward to with regard to this young guy, and I think we're about to find that out. Rodney Webb coached Jackson Arnold at Denton High School for a couple of years. He's now at Rockwall Heath after taking a year to try administration as an athletic director at Highland Park. And I thought with the Alamo Bowl now just days away and Arnold's first OU start in the same time frame, we'd get a better understanding and a little dig into to Rodney's head so that we can perhaps get a sense of what's going through Jackson's head here on Mind Games. Coach, good to see you again, first of all.
Yeah, it's good to be on.
Let me start with something you told me again 2 years ago, and it was sort of the quote that jumped out from the column I wrote. He could be the face of the franchise. And what did you mean by that? And how does that translate now you think that Arnold is the new starting quarterback at OU?
Well, I just think there's so many things to love about Jackson from a fan perspective. You know, he's a tremendous player, but on top of that, he's a tremendous human being, and he's just somebody that's very easy to root for. It's somebody that all Sooner fans are going to be proud to have leading that team. The way he conducts himself on the field, the way he conducts himself off the field, and I just think you couldn't ask for a better young man to be that face of the franchise.
I tell you what, you opened up the door to the personality. I want to talk about football before we let you go a little bit later in the show, but you opened up the door to the personality. And quarterbacks have to tick different, right? They've got a different responsibility. They have to bring the locker room along with them a lot of times. What did you notice specifically about Jackson, either at a young age or as he developed with you those 2 years at Denton Guyer?
Yeah, I think from a personality standpoint, it's important for the quarterback to own the locker room, you know, to have the respect of his teammates. And that's something that I feel like Jackson has probably already done there at OU. The way that he lives his life, the way his work ethic, his attention to detail, and he's got a charisma about him that people like him. People like to be around him. And so I think from that standpoint, he already, he's got the backs of his teammates and they've got his back as well, even though he's not even started his first game yet.
Was there, would you call it you almost have to be cocky when you're playing big time high school football in Texas. You certainly it doesn't hurt to have that gene when you're running the show at a college like Oklahoma. You might choose the word confident, but could you give us a sense of just how sure he is of himself or was of himself when you had him in high school and might continue to be now that he's got the job at OU?
Yeah, I think it is a fine line. Confidence and cockiness or swagger, there's a fine line between the two. And he's certainly a confident guy and he comes by it naturally. You know, I think that, he's just a guy that I'm not going to say everything comes easy for him because he works very hard at his craft, and he's tremendously dedicated to the weight room, to developing his body, and so I think there's a lot that's to be confident about if you're him,
Hmm.
But I think, he's certainly a guy that just exudes that confidence or swagger on the field.
When did you, Rodney? When did you first encounter this guy?
Well, I took the job at Guerin right during the middle of COVID, right during the quarantine.
Mm.
And so my first experience meeting that entire roster was on uh, Zoom on the computer.
Mm.
And so it was a bizarre experience, but trying to meet the kids, trying to get the offense installed, it was all on a computer screen. So the first several times that I ever had an encounter with Jackson was on a computer screen. And then finally in June of 2020, we started being allowed to have in-person workouts again. And that's when I got an opportunity to meet him in person and have an opportunity to watch him work.
Now you got to have to help me with the timeline. It's a little fuzzy, but he didn't have the keys to your offense right away, correct?
No, we had a returning quarterback named Eli Stowers that had actually
Yeah,
been
right.
state player of the year before, and
Yeah.
was coming off a knee injury and was committed to Texas A&M. And so Eli was the returning quarterback, and so Jackson showed remarkable patience during that year where Eli started. We went to the semifinals that year, so that was 15 games, and Eli started every one of those games. And Jackson played a considerable amount and was spectacular when he was on the field. But Eli was a captain for our team and was sort of the seminal leader of the team. And so Jackson waited his time his sophomore year in 2020.
And that's going to ring familiar to OU fans, is it not? With him biding his time with the Sooners behind Dillon Gabriel. And I, every quarterback wants to play. Every quarterback wants the ball. You wouldn't be in that position if you didn't. You have to take deep breaths probably a lot of days as you take those mental reps, as they call it in practice, while the starter gets all of the snaps with the ones. Do you think his experience behind Stowers helped him absorb the reality of waiting his turn at Oklahoma behind Gabriel?
Yeah, I think it's almost an identical situation.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson made the most of his opportunity as a sophomore to watch and learn, watch from an older veteran player. Um, Took advantage of every opportunity that he got, but also got those mental reps, as you speak of. And so I would imagine it's been the same during his first year at Oklahoma. I'm sure he's learned a lot from Dillon Gabriel. He's learned a lot from his position as a backup. Um, but my feeling is that when you see him on the field and the keys to the offense are his, everybody's going to realize that he has been adequately preparing this entire time.
Did you tailor when Stowers moved on? It was his position, correct? Jackson's position.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you, Rodney, tailor your offense to fit Jackson, or was the offense going to be what it was, and it was on Jackson to adapt to what you did, or where did you meet there?
Yeah, so we actually we really had to adapt the offense somewhat to fit Eli Stowers the year before. What we do offensively and what Oklahoma does offensively are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a great fit for Eli. His strengths lied in other areas of the game. So I had to have a little bit more creativity the year before. But when it was Jackson's turn, he was a much better fit for what we do offensively. And so we really kind of got back to square one with him.
What did he do better? How did he help you the most, just in terms of football? Or was it as a thrower? Was it as a guy who maybe read coverages preternaturally compared to other high school kids? Was it using his mobility to get out of jams? Where did he excel the most? That had you doing big things and with Guyer with that team?
Well, the answer to that would be yes to all the above. I mean, he's very gifted and he's a very complete quarterback. But I would say if you want to start talking about the list of things that Jackson Arnold does the best, I would start with this. He's a tremendous decision maker. He has the ability to process a lot. We put a lot on his shoulders. We did our best to keep the offense simple for 10 players, but really complex for one player. And he's at his best when he has opportunities to make those decisions pre-snap, on the snap, and post-snap. The game happens very slow for him. And obviously, the speed of the game is faster at the college level than the high school level. But I don't think there will be any level of football where it happens too fast. He's got the ability to process things in a very short amount of time. And so that is probably the thing that he does best. Beyond that, he has got an electric arm. I'm not sure that has totally been borne out in his opportunities this year, but you'll see it in the bowl game. He has an electric arm. And, I hesitate to call him a dual threat. He has the tremendous athletic ability, by the way, tremendous athletic ability. But his strength lies in extending plays. He is a very good runner, and if you want to involve him in the quarterback run game, he can certainly do that. But even better than that is just his ability to extend the play. You almost have to put a spy on him defensively, because when the pocket breaks down and he decides to run, he can do some serious damage.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear you talk about his ability to process when you had him a few years ago. I think listeners and viewers to the show will recall the second half at BYU, right? Arnold's biggest snaps as a college player, and in particular, a 3rd and 8 pickup that the Sooners needed to sort of put that game away, where Jackson audibled out of something that Jeff Lebby had signaled down from upstairs and connected with Jalil Farouk for the first down that Oklahoma needed. I take it that is something that didn't surprise you.
Right. I didn't get to see the whole game, but I saw that play. And that's classic Jackson Arnold. Get the team in the best situation possible for success. And again, that is the strength, and there's no doubt the coaches at OU have figured that out. And that is just one of those things that he does well. I've coached quarterbacks over the years that you have to limit their decision making. They're not comfortable. That you need to tell them in some cases where to throw the ball.
Yeah.
Jackson. He just keeps you out of so many bad plays with his decision making.
Yeah. Something else you said that's interesting. He was under wraps, I think, in that situation in Provo, and I think we understand the circumstance. Not too much too soon. Didn't expect to be in that game like he was, with Gabriel leaving the way he did. But with all of that aside, and with the run up to the Alamo Bowl now being so long, you said we haven't seen the arm yet. I wonder if you have an inkling that we will, in fact, OU's in an interesting spot, right? They're transitioning from Lebby to Seth Luttrell as coordinator, so it's not like they're going to have the install by the Alamo Bowl. But you wonder if perhaps Arnold can play freer and easier, and that we will see a little bit more of that right arm you're referencing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just being the guy, you think about the number of practice reps the starter gets versus the backup. The game plan is being prepared for that starting quarterback. And I don't know Dillon Gabriel well enough to know exactly what his strengths were, but I feel like those two guys were probably a little bit different. And so you think, well, here's the game plan that's been tailored for Jackson Arnold, and he has gotten to rep that plan. The coaches have gotten to see the arm talent as the starting quarterback with the starting receivers. And so, yeah, I would be shocked if he's not able to show that talent that he's got with the arm.
And it is talent. I was watching a podcast, Coach, with 3 current Sooners just a few days ago, and Gentry Williams, the starting corner on defense, was talking about a throw that Arnold made in practice around October, I think it was. And when the defense got together to watch tape of that practice, Brent Venables stopped and rewound and stopped and rewound because the coverage was good. I don't know if Gentry was on the coverage, but he said someone was covering the receiver and the coverage was perfect. And he couldn't believe that Arnold had the, shall we say, the guts to even attempt to throw, let alone complete it. And so I think that was Gentry's way of saying, I sort of knew then that there was something to this. And I'm wondering if there was that kind of a moment for you when you had him at Guyer. Was there a throw in a game or even in a workout that made you think this is a little different?
So there is. It was actually in the summer, and it was at a 7-on-7 tournament. school 7-on-7.
Hmm.
And that's when I saw when Jackson needs to load up, like he throws a very catchable ball. All right, he's got great arm talent and he can throw it with tremendous velocity, but he throws a very catchable ball, which is a great quality for a quarterback to have. But our guys were playing a 7-on-7 tournament, and it was the last play of the game. We had to score to win the game and ultimately to win the tournament. And he had a dig route in the end zone, and he had a very small window to get the ball thrown in. And of course, in 7-on-7, you've got to throw it on time, or the play goes dead. And it was a do or die moment, and he had to load up and throw it into this tight window. And he knew he had to get it there in a hurry. And he loaded up and threw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball from about the 15 or 18-yard line into the end zone. The kid caught it, and we won the game. And that's when I realized, like, he has the ability to make any kind of throw he needs to make, and he's got the confidence to throw the ball in the small windows. You know, for some quarterbacks, open means a receiver's got to have a couple of yards of space from the defender.
Right.
And with other quarterbacks, open means they only have maybe a half a body on the defender, and the quarterback can throw them into open space. And Jackson's one of those guys. An open receiver to Jackson is a little bit different than it is with a lot of quarterbacks.
What do you remember about his recruitment? It's been a while now, but was there something did he handle it differently, or was he approached differently? Even you've probably seen a lot of guys over the years be recruited down from your programs in Texas. But how was it for Jackson?
You know, Jackson got his first offer before he had ever started a high school game. You know, after his sophomore year, in the limited amount he played, you could see it. You know, you could see it. He's not one of those guys that went on the tour, you know, the quarterback combine tour and all that. He didn't do a lot of that stuff. Didn't play for any kind of a select 7-on-7 team, so wasn't getting any hype from any of that kind of stuff. It was strictly off the tape from his sophomore year, and that's where it started. And then, you know, guys would show up to off-season workouts. And we would set up a lot of times, if there were going to be 3 or 4 coaches there, we'd set up a little throwing session during the athletics period for him and some of our receivers as well. And, you know, I would say Jackson handled recruiting like he handles everything else in life. He's a happy kid, but he's very stoic, you know, and he doesn't really never gets too high or too low. Yeah. And he just sort of took it all in. I think his parents have done a great job raising him and preparing him, you know, for the social, some of the social anxiety that typically comes along with meeting college coaches. And he handled it great. It was very buttoned down recruitment. And I mean, a ton of people, every college in the country just about came through there. Sure. Either recruiting Jackson or one of the other seniors in that class. You know, I think that for him, it was, you know, there was kind of an ebb and flow of his recruitment initially about who he liked and where he thought he saw himself going. At one point in time, it was when Coach Lebby at Ole Miss really liked the idea of going to Ole Miss. And then they were also recruiting Arch Manning, so I don't really know about that. And then it was Notre Dame, and we thought, well, it looks like he's going to go to Notre Dame. And then he ultimately, especially when Coach Lebby went to OU, that seemed to make a lot of sense to him. I think, you know, Denton to Norman is not a long trip, very tight with his family. They're still in Denton. And so I think, you know, OU just checked a lot of boxes for him early on.
You mentioned the relationship, or you mentioned Lebby, the relationship with Jeff pretty well established. He gets the job at Mississippi State at the end of OU's regular season, and transfer portal opens up. People are wondering I think there's an idea about what Gabriel's going to do next. The curveball is that he's going to play another year of college, maybe not turn pro. And so you're trying to, again, get into a head of a guy who's only taken this many snaps in college, and that's Arnold. And did you think about him during that time, Rodney? Were you wondering what was going through his head between Lebby moving and Gabriel maybe moving and then finally moving and the portal being the portal and, you know, NIL opportunities being what they are? How were you approaching it from afar?
Well, I didn't have any inkling that he would even consider transferring or doing anything different. I think, Jackson is a very loyal guy. And, I feel like, he is, he's had a great experience at OU. My advice to him when he was getting recruited is don't pick a university because of any coach, because they change a lot. And there's a really good chance during your time that wherever you go, that the guy that recruited you or the coordinator or the head coach or all of them are going to be leaving. And so you want to pick a university that you like because of the university. And so I think absolutely he had a great relationship with Coach Lebby, but I think he's more Sooner right now than anything.
Yep. Gabriel off to Oregon, Lebby to Mississippi State. The business of college football is the business of college football. We're all sort of getting numb to it, Rodney, as we go. If nothing else, OU knows what it has, though, in the next starting quarterback, a guy I know that you know extremely well, in Jackson Arnold. Appreciate your insight into him. I did want to ask as well about another of your former players down at Guerin, and that's a player that we actually saw quite a bit more of this season than Jackson. That was Peyton Bowen and the contributions he made to Venables' defense at Oklahoma. Tell us a little bit about what you remember of Peyton, the person and the player, and how you felt about his maiden voyage through college football this fall.
He was a lot of fun to watch, and not surprised at any of the success he had this year. Peyton is an electric athlete. Again, a guy that trains so well and takes such good care of his body, and he's developed himself so well. Peyton is an offensive skill player cloaked in a defensive player's body, clothing, I should say. He's the guy that's going to, and I think he blocked a couple of punts this year, maybe had a couple of fumble recoveries, forced fumbles. But Peyton is a game changer on defense. And there are a lot of interceptions coming down the road for him because he's just got an amazing instinct at finding the ball and getting to the ball. And when it's within arm's length, he's going to get it. And he's got great hands for a defensive player. So, I think his future is very bright. He's a very versatile player. I think they used him at 2 or 3 different spots in the secondary this year, but he's talented enough to play corner, physical enough to play safety. And I think, he'll get knock on wood, he stays healthy. He'll get a ton of snaps over the next few years at OU.
Well, and it's going to be fascinating to watch his knowledge, if you will, catch up with his talent, right? It's Brent Venables' defense is it is not easy to absorb. I've covered him, Rodney, since he was Bob Stoops' coordinator 25 years ago when he moved over from K-State, and I've seen a lot of players' heads go to mush trying to adapt and figure it out. And they use instinct for a while, and that works, and they're able to make some plays, some tackles. Bowen certainly made his impact felt in his spot this past season. But, man, when he really digests the system and Venables' concepts, given, again, the flashes he showed in almost a cameo role, it seemed, on defense, you really wonder just how high the ceiling is for this kid.
Yeah, and he's got a very high football IQ. So I've got no doubt that, however complex the install is for that particular week or that particular season, that will not limit his ability to be on the field. He's a smart kid, the nicest kid in the world, by the way, too, like the nicest kid you'll ever come across.
Easy to root for guys like that. So are you allowed to adopt a college team, Rodney, or do you have to play it pretty straight as a big-time high school football coach in Texas? Because it sounds like you could invest a little time and energy in the Sooners just between these two.
Yeah, I always tend to root for the schools where I've got kids playing. Just a quick story about that. So 1 year ago, I had a receiver at Ohio State, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I was up in Columbus to watch them play Wisconsin. And so I'm in the stadium. I've got my Ohio State gear on. I'm rooting for the Buckeyes to beat Wisconsin. 1 year later, I've got a quarterback now that is starting at Wisconsin. They're playing Ohio State. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin at the Ohio State game, dressed in my Wisconsin gear, cheering for the Badgers to knock off the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
So that's just the way it goes for a high school coach. I have, really no rooting interest at all other than the teams where I've got kids that play. So obviously based on that, I've got my OU gear, and I'll be rooting for the Sooners against just pretty much anybody they play.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear back in coaching. The last thing I'd read, based from our conversation, again, this was January 22, was you'd retired. And I hope I'm not using the wrong word, but that was how it was written in the papers in the Metroplex, or the reports, that you had decided to take a sabbatical, if you will, from coaching. You became an AD for a year at Highland Park, but
Right.
you look like a coach again just from the shirt. So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to since in fact Jackson and Peyton were playing for you at Guerin.
Yeah, so after the state final run at Guerin in 2021, I had an opportunity to become the athletic director at Highland Park, which I think in a lot of people's estimation, that's probably the best AD job in the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up for a lot of different reasons. So I stepped away from Guerin, left some really good players in the program at Guerin, and it was kind of hard to walk away from. But had an opportunity to do that, and I felt like that's how I would finish my career. 1 year into that, the head football job at Rockwall Heath came open, and back in my hometown. I had spent 7 years at Rockwall High, which is the arch rival of Heath, and we were living back in Rockwall. And when the job came open, there's some people, local community people that I think a lot of, and they reached out about the possibility of me coming back out of coaching retirement, so to speak. And I had an opportunity to assemble a tremendous staff, to get some guys that had played for me back in town, to get some coaches that I'd coached with in the past back in town. And I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And so I'm glad I did. It's been very worthwhile up to this point. I'm just less than a year back into it. But, I think that year away from coaching was good for me. It gave me some new perspective, and I think allowed me to sort of fill up my tank for one last run. And however long this lasts, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, I think I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. Hopefully I get another Jackson Arnold, Peyton Bowen along the way too.
You said you went 9-3 at Heath this year?
Yeah, we had a 9-3 season. Yeah, we lost to Duncanville, who's playing in the state finals.
Okay, that doesn't sound bad. What's the trophy that Rockwall and Heath play for? Is there like what's the tradition there? Is it a golden something, a bronze something, or what's the bragging rights?
So it's called the I-30 Classic because the dividing line in Rockwall is Interstate 30. And so it's called the I-30 Classic. Rockwall's the north side, Heath is the south side. And there is a trophy that makes the Stanley Cup look like a trinket. It's like this gigantic trophy that goes to the winning team every year. So, we're told that we really need to try to downplay the rivalry. But then whoever wins the game wins this gigantic trophy. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, I hope they're not swigging what they shouldn't out of the trophy like the hockey players do the cup. Right, or are you just talking about size? You're not talking shape. They're not. It's not like a claret jug or anything like that.
It actually is. It's actually this big, like a chalice. It's. I'm telling you, it's ridiculously big. Yeah.
Okay. Drinking Gatorade out of it, right?
Yeah. We normally play early in the year, so it's pretty hot. So yeah, some kind of electrolyte.
Hey, real quick while I got you, Oklahoma high school football is, this being a neighboring state is a big deal. I'm in Tulsa, so Jenks, Union, Broken Arrow, Bixby, Owasso, just one after another feels like a small college, if not FCS anymore, if not Group of 5 anymore. Right. Is there an end game to how big Texas high school football can be based on your experience, or do you worry that you're heading down a path you shouldn't be on based on some things that are happening with high school football?
Yeah, so I think there is a trickle down from what is happening in the college game to what happens in the high school game, and I think it impacts every state. Yeah. What is awesome about Texas is that we have a public school league where the players that play for a school live in that geographical boundary of that school, and so it's truly the neighborhood kids that play for the school. And that is one of the things that has set Texas football apart over the years. And I think one thing that I'm concerned about that we're struggling with right now is that we have some districts in our state that are open enrollment districts where you can attend from outside those boundary lines. And I think there are some people in our state that have figured out we can recruit players to come in and play here. There's a period of ineligibility of a calendar year. But if a kid moves into a school when he's a freshman, and in some cases a sophomore, well, he's not going to be playing on the varsity for a year anyway. So they get there from out of the area and from not living in that school's boundary.
Yeah.
And they set out their year, and then they're good to go. And so, I think you've got a handful of programs around the state that are beginning to dominate, that are playing with an all-star team in some cases. They're not really playing with the neighborhood kids. Those kids that play for Heath High School, those kids that play at Denton Guyer, they live in that boundary 100%. That's where they live. That's where their parents live. That's where they go to school. And so I think we're fighting that a little bit. Other states deal with that. You've got the IMGs and some of the schools out in California that have become football magnets.
Right.
And so, but it's still a beautiful thing in the state of Texas, as it is in Oklahoma. And I keep up. Bixby is, what do they want? It's like 5 in a row now. Bixby's won or something like that.
Yeah. And they moved up to 6A1, which is the highest class after being at 6A2 and 5A, winning most, the first several of those championships. And now they're flicking aside Union and Jinx like they were playing, a county school. It's crazy.
Yeah. I've seen some video clips of Bixby. I think they're very impressive, very unique what they do offensively for sure. And then Bill Blankenship, what a legend he is, he's got a very, very interesting outlook on football as well.
For sure. I would love to continue this conversation maybe toward the spring, just in terms of the ins and outs of high school football. I could talk for hours about it. Most of it's, like to your point, most of it's positive. But I also know that coaches like Bill and Kirk Frederick at Union and even Lauren at Bixby have expressed concerns just in passing about, gosh, this is not quite the game I signed up for in some aspects for all their success. And so we'll pick up on this topic at some point down the road. But since I got you on to talk about the Sooners and Jackson Arnold, I just want to ask you one more thing for the sake of this show. What is Santa Claus bringing Rodney Webb this year?
Well, I don't know if I've been a good enough boy. I think I may get a lump of coal in my stocking this year. I don't know. When you get to be kind of an old guy like me, you're just happy with good health, and if your family is all happy and healthy, that's about all I could really ask for. But I drive a Jeep Wrangler, and I like to take the top off of that Wrangler, and I currently don't have a good setup for like how to get it off and where to put it.
Okay.
So I've asked my wife for a little. There's a little device where you can. It sort of takes the top off and you can hang it on the device, and it rolls around. So if Santa Claus has got room in the sleigh, I'm hoping I get that to make my transition to the top on, top off for my Jeep a little bit easier.
That sounds good. And if he doesn't have room in the sleigh, surely an 11th or 10th or 11th win for Heath next fall might be in order.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
That. Yeah, for sure. Sooner fans will take an Alamo Bowl win over Arizona and, 300 yards passing in Jackson Arnold's debut. It's not like this fan base expects much, Coach. I'm sure you've heard that.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you probably can relate, being where you've been down in Texas high school circles. Right. We'll all be curious to see what Jackson Arnold brings to the Sooners in the Alamo Dome against Arizona on December 28th. It's been great getting some insight and perspective on what he potentially brings OU, what he has brought. This man, our guest Rodney Webb, as coach one time at Denton Guyer, now at Rockball Heath. We thank him for his time. We thank you for your time. We will be back next week for another edition of Mind Games. Best of luck Christmas shopping, holiday shopping. In the meantime, for Jacqueline Musgrove, as well as her crew back behind the scenes, making sure we are on the air and looking as good as it's possible to make a couple of several former sports writers in the Sellout Crowd stable. Thanks very much for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.